Hey there, tonight we'll wander back to the quiet place before stories learned how to speak. If this kind of slow, gentle retelling helps you relax, you're welcome to like and subscribe, but only if it genuinely brings you peace. If you'd like to leave a small lantern for others, tell us in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's comforting to know how many night skies are keeping each other company. For now, dim whatever can dim. Let your jaw soften, shoulders drop. There's nothing you need to solve. You're just going to listen the way people always have, with the lights low and the mind untying itself. Before there were heroes with errands and kings with worries, before oars bit water or hooves struck road, there was a stillness with possibility folded inside it. The poets called it chaos, not commotion, but a yawning space, a gap, a breath pulled in and held. No sun, no sea, no names, only room. From that room came Gaia, the broad earth, steady and green in potential, a patient foundation for everything heavy and everything light. Deep beneath, even her roots pooled Tartarus, a depth more idea than place, a limit where light did not bother to travel. And there was Eros, not wings and arrows yet, just the gentle law that draws things together, seed to soil, thought to thought, hand to hand. Out of the hush, other pairs began to answer each other. Erebus, the comfortable dark, Nyx, night, with her soft curtains, Ether, the bright upper air, and Hemera, the clear day. These names are old enough to feel like stones smoothed by passing rivers. They don't hurry, they simply are. Gaia, generous as Earth tends to be, brought forth a canopy for herself. Uranus, the sky, jeweled with stars and thin blue breath. Earth stretched, sky arched. Together they made room, valleys to cradle rivers, ridges for shadows to rest, caves to hold secrets until someone was ready to find them. From earth and sky came children, 12 of them the stories remember best. The Titans, 6 daughters, 6 sons, tall as hills in the imagination. Among them you'll meet familiar leanings. Oceanos, who imagined the world as a ring of water. Tethys, mothering springs. Hyperion with the bright look of the sun about him, and Thea with the spark that makes jewels catch light. Themis, order and custom. Mnemosyne, memory, keeper of what to keep. And later, from her, singers called muses who would teach humans how to shape breath into song. But beginnings are rarely tidy. Uranus, the high arch, looked at his children and felt something like unease. Perhaps they were too large, too unfinished, too ready to build. Whatever the reason, he pressed them down, forced them back into their mother, burying their sighs and their voices within Gaia herself. The old poets don't fuss with psychology here. They simply say, it hurt. It hurt the earth to hold back what wanted to become. So Gaia imagined tools. Rock remembers how to be edge. Edge remembers how to be change. She shaped a sickle, stone sharpened to decision, and whispered from within herself to the sons buried there. One by one they hesitated. One did not. The youngest, Kronos, patient and watchful, agreed to act when the moment lowered its guard. When Uranus descended again to rest across the world, Kronos reached. The blow was sudden, irreversible. The sky was cut from the earth. The old order ended, in the foam where the severed grief met sea. Later poets place a surprising arrival. Aphrodite, beauty stepping out of light like a shore appears out of mist. From the blood on earth came furies for wrongs within families, and great giants that felt like mountains learning to walk. Myth is comfortable letting difficult things birth unexpected ones. It's not an equation, it's weather. With Uranus withdrawn, Kronos lifted the sickle as a standard and began what singers called a golden age, not gold as wealth, but as ease. People, when they arrived, did not yet need locks or punishments. Bread rose, Days turned kindly, but prophecies prefer longer arcs than afternoons. The sky, even in defeat, gave voice to a warning. As you unseated your father, so a child will unseat you. Repetition sits near the heart of these stories. What we do teaches what will be done. If you find yourself drifting, that's fine. The river knows where it's going. Your only job is to float. Kronos married his sister Rhea, who had a smile the old poems call dignified and tired in equal measure. Their children began to arrive, glowing with the beginnings of the gods most of us can name. Hestia, who keeps fires where people gather. Demeter, who teaches seeds how to remember the way upward. Hera, who stands beside oaths. Hades, who knows how to keep quiet company. Poseidon, whose mood turns waves from shy to tall. But every time a newborn cried, Kronos remembered the warning. If the future comes through children, then close the door, he thought. In a panic that wore the language of caution, he swallowed them each as they arrived. Myths speak plainly here. They don't say metaphor, they say mouth. Rhea counted losses until numbers lost sense. When another child stirred, she decided grief would not be the only rhythm. On a hidden island, Crete, they say, she gave birth and held a son for just long enough to feel his weight. Then she wrapped a stone in cloth and handed the bundle to Kronos, who, being very busy with being careful, did not look. Down went the stone. Away went the child. The boy grew among leaves and goat milk and lullabies that had to be sung softly. The cave roof wept in slow drops. The air smelled like wet rock, a smell older than names. The nymphs called him Zeus. He learned to listen first, then move. He learned that anger has many speeds, and that patience sometimes rides it like a rider on a difficult horse. One day, a young man left a cave as a servant might leave a room, carrying things, saying little. He poured wine, he watched, and at the right cup, he poured a little more, an old earth medicine that knew how to turn down into out. Kronos gagged, heaved. The children he had kept from the world came back into the world whole, adult now by divine custom, blinking as if they'd woken from a long, confusing dream. Along with them clattered the stone, still wrapped, a reminder that tricks, even just ones, leave leftovers. The reunion was not gentle. Love reacts. So does insult. The ground, which had felt everything, tensed its shoulders in mountain ranges, as the family realized that conversation would not be enough. The poets don't rush here. They call it simply war, and they give it a name big enough to hold 10 years of thunder. Titanomachy, the struggle with the Titans. Kronos and those who agreed with him took a dark mountain. The stories call Othrys. Zeus and his returned siblings climbed a different peak, Olympus, that would keep its place in the imagination long after anyone remembered the paths to reach it. At first there was deadlock. The Titans were old strength, the younger gods were new will. Boulders flew the way ideas do when both sides are sure. Rivers rerouted as if tugged by anger. Trees watched with a patience trees specialize in. Neither side could end it without changing the tools. In a later chapter, we'll come back to what broke the tie. The Cyclops' gifts and the 100-handed ones who could lift what storms could not. For now, let the clouds gather at the edge of your attention like curtains you can draw when you're ready. Before any of that, it helps to know the shape of the family that was forming. The children freed from Kronos' stomach were not interchangeable. Even this early, their leanings were clear, like constellations starting to suggest shapes. Hestia warmed the center of things. In city halls and farmhouse kitchens, her presence would be the quiet flame that means home. Demeter would listen to the fields. Her moods would become seasons, not because she was fickle, but because her love could be interrupted and resumed like growth. Hera would lift an eyebrow that could silence a room. She would stand next to promises and expect them to stand up straight. Hades, already serious, would eventually learn every path beneath the world and lightly touch each arriving soul on the shoulder, the way a good host lets you know where to sit. Poseidon would keep company with the deep, horses stamping foam on beaches, earthquakes like the sea remembering the old seabed, and Zeus, headstrong in bright air, would be equal parts order and weather, judge and gust. But none of that had fully settled. Right now, there was only the problem the old world had with the new. When answers are slow, stories often send their characters downward. Zeus did that, into Tartarus, to lift beings who had been bound there when the sky still touched the earth. The Hecatan Caries, a name that sounds like stone steps, 3 giants with many heads for seeing and 100 arms for lifting. The Cyclopes, smiths with a single clear eye for focus, makers of Heat's tools. They had been locked away out of fear. Now they would come out singing sparks. But that is Chapter 2's work. For tonight's first stretch, it's enough to feel how repetition, and the choice to interrupt it, makes myth move. Uranus pressed his children down. Kronos learned sharpness and cut upward. Kronos feared his children and swallowed. Rhea learned cunning and hid. Zeus learned patience and returned what had been taken. The pattern clicks like a loom. The cloth that will become the world is beginning to show a design. If you're still awake and feel like it, tell us which city cradles you tonight. If you're already drifting, let the thought go out like a tide. Either choice is correct. The poets called the time before the war golden, but gold, even in myth, can tarnish if no one cares for it. Without conversation, even gardens become forest, and even forest needs trails or feet forget the way through. Kronos' reign, however peaceful for mortals, taught one lesson too clearly, that fear, dressed as prudence, can eat the future. That's a heavy sentence to carry to sleep, so we'll give it a softer pillow. Every fear in this story is met by someone's courage, and usually by a clever plan involving a stone, a song, or a well-timed cup. Before we close this chapter, a few small, steady truths the storytellers hold in their palms. Gaia is not only scenery. When the earth intervenes later, guiding dreams, advising remedies, remember she has already acted here. The ground is a character. Names arrive slowly. Early gods are forces first, personalities second. As myth moves, forces learn to speak, and that's when stories quicken. Creation leaves scraps. Seafoam births beauty. Blood on soil grows consequences. The world keeps what falls from our hands and finds uses we didn't plan. Breathe out once, longer than usual. Imagine the first air the world learned to keep, the open space the poets called chaos. Quiet, patient, generous. Above it now arches a sky that can be cut and healed. Beneath it rests an earth that can hurt and yet still give. Between them stand a family not yet finished becoming themselves, choosing tools, choosing sides and inventing the words we still use for power and promise. There's nothing else to do. Let the mountains hold what they're holding. Let the gods step back into the mist for a while. We'll find them again when you're ready for Chapter 2. The Long War, where thunder becomes decision, gifts are forged, and the world chooses who will keep the sky, who will keep the sea, and who will keep the quiet roads underneath. Sleep if you're going to. Stay if you want to. Either way, you're already where you need to be. If you're just joining us, or if you drifted away for a while and woke up to this voice again, that's fine. You haven't missed anything you need. Every myth loops. Every dream remembers how to find its place. Tonight, we pick up the thread from the first rumble of the Titanomachy, the war between those who were and those who would be. If your eyes feel heavy, let them. There's nothing sharp coming. Thunder in these stories sounds more like waves than explosions. Zeus, youngest child of Kronos and Rhea, has freed his siblings from the belly of time. Now they look up from Mount Olympus toward Mount Othrys, where their father and the Titans stand, unwilling to yield the sky. If the telling helps you rest, you can whisper a small like toward the stars, or simply breathe once for everyone listening in other rooms, other countries, other hours. Maybe type in the comments, "Still awake in Lisbon," or "Listening from a night bus." The words weave together. That's the point. Before war comes tools, and before tools come friends. Gaia, who has never stopped noticing what her children do, offers a quiet suggestion. Down below, you buried others once. They will help you now. So Zeus and his brothers descend again into Tartarus, a depth that hums like the space between heartbeats. There, behind locks of fire and stone, lie the Cyclopes and the 100-handers. Old powers punished for being too strange. The Cyclopes are enormous and calm. Each bears one perfect eye that sees purpose rather than detail. They remember heat the way some people remember lullabies. When Zeus breaks their chains, the air trembles like metal cooling. They repay the favor not with speech, but with craft. For Zeus, they forge a thunderbolt, a spark caught mid-decision, light that always finds its path back to sky. For Poseidon, they shape a trident, three-toothed like choice itself, to raise waves, to calm them, to hold steady. For Hades, they fashion a helm of invisibility, because not all power needs to be seen. The 100-handers, brothers of unbearable weight, stretch and shake dust from their many fingers. They agree to stand beside the young gods. Each step they take sounds like continents remembering they once floated. When they climb back to daylight, the horizon bends. Kronos' army lines Othrys like a forest of intent. Oceanus hesitates. He prefers movement to loyalty and drifts away toward his rivers. But many titans stay. Iapetus, father of Prometheus and Epimetheus, Coeus and Crius, whose names taste of direction and force, Atlas, the broad-shouldered strength of mountains. The first strikes are slow. Thunder meets rock. Lightning writes brief poems across cloud. Mountains bruise. The stories tell of trees torn up and thrown as javelins, of rivers boiled to mist, of sound thick enough to lean on. But even in myth, endless war is boring, and so the poets fast forward through years with the rhythm of sleep itself. Burst, silence, until something shifts. Zeus learns rhythm. He doesn't attack faster, he attacks wiser. He throws his bolts not to destroy, but to signal. Each flash is a message to a brother. Poseidon answers with surge. Hades, unseen, slides beneath the battlefield, touching fear into the ankles of those who stand against him. Above them, the 100-handers lift entire cliffs and drop them like punctuation. 10 years grind by, but time in myth is flexible. Eventually, Kronos looks up and realizes the sky no longer listens to him. The final stand happens on a plain where even memory gets tired. Zeus hurls one last bolt. The air stays bright for a long, astonished second. When the glow folds away, Othrys is broken. The Titans fall. No one dies the way mortals do. Gods are ideas wrapped in personalities. They transform, diminish, relocate. The younger gods gather the defeated and lead them back down, deeper than before, into Tartarus. The Cyclopes build bronze gates thick enough to muffle eternity. The 100-handers become their wardens, each palm a fortress. Over the pit the new king speaks, not loud, but firm. Let the old order rest here, not destroyed but kept from returning. In myths, that's as close to mercy as victory gets. Gaia sighs. Her sons abound again, her grandsons rule. The pattern repeats, but with more sky between the echoes. If your mind wandered, let it. These wars are long and circular for a reason. They give you permission to drift. All that matters is that the sky and earth are no longer pressed together. There's space to breathe, and in that space, stories start to grow. When the dust settles, the brothers draw lots. Fate prefers chance to discussion. Zeus takes the sky, the bright and shifting roof of everything. Poseidon receives the sea, forever in motion, forever returning. Hades inherits the underworld, not as punishment but as stewardship of endings. The earth itself remains common ground, a shared hearth between realms. Zeus builds a new seat on the mountain that had been his fortress, Olympus, and gathers those who will live there. The air thins, light softens. It isn't a palace yet, only a promise that someone is watching the weather. From the dust of war comes structure. Zeus calls Themis, Titaness of divine law, to stand beside him. From her advice spring boundaries, day and night, guest and host, oath and witness. He asks his grandmother Gaia for counsel, and she tells him the quiet truth all rulers must hear. Justice that forgets mercy ends up lonely. The newly freed gods begin to shape the world as they like it. Poseidon rides the coasts with his trident, drawing bays and inlets where ships will someday sleep. Demeter walks the plains, tracing furrows with her fingertips until wheat remembers how to grow. Hestia builds the first hearths, invisible flames in every household that will ever exist. Hera steps beside Zeus, not yet his wife, simply another presence too strong to ignore. Above them, the Cyclopes set constellations as if hanging lanterns after a long storm. They pin the heavens in patterns mortals will later try to name, the bear, the twins, the hunter. But right now, those names are only motions in the dark, gentle reminders that light can return. Soon there will be new questions. What to do with mortals, how to share fire, how to love without undoing the world. Those belong to later chapters. For now, Olympus hums with the sound of rest after effort. The same sound that fills your room when you finally finished something difficult. Far below, in Tartarus, the Titans are not silent. Atlas, strongest of them, is given a peculiar task, to stand at the edge of the world and hold the heavens upright. It isn't punishment so much as purpose. Someone has to keep the roof steady while the new generation decorates it. The other Titans murmur old songs. The sound seeps upward through cracks in the earth and becomes thunder in springtime. That's how myth explains weather, memory trying to speak. Even victory carries warnings. Zeus, who has seen his father's paranoia, vows not to repeat it. He builds no prisons for his own children, not yet. He throws feasts instead, inviting the muses, daughters of memory, to sing. Their voices fill the air like early rain, telling of what was and what might be. The songs have verses about balance, how the sea needs boundaries but not walls, how the underworld should be feared but also trusted, how even lightning should know when to stop. Zeus listens, for now he believes he will remember. Take a breath, let it out slowly. You've just listened through a decade of thunder compressed into a handful of heartbeats. If you're still awake, maybe write in the comments which part of the myth you remember most. The forging of the thunderbolt, the three brothers drawing lots, or the Cyclopes opening their single eyes. If you're asleep, that's fine. The story is still happening somewhere. With the war ended, the world settles into layers: heaven, sea, and underworld. Each realm has edges that sometimes blur. Mist where souls depart, foam where sky meets water, fog on mountains where gods descend disguised as travelers. Mortals will be born soon, and those boundaries will matter. Hera looks down and sees the first small fires of human villages. Demeter listens to seeds cracking open in the dark. Poseidon feels the pull of tides shaping islands. Even Hades finds company in the slow, inevitable drift of souls toward quietness. Olympus begins to shine, not with marble yet, but with routine. Each dawn is a story rehearsal. Helios guiding the sun across the firmament, Selene drawing it back at night, Eos blushing at the edges like a messenger embarrassed to arrive too early. Myths always circle back to rhythm: rise, rule, fall, repeat. The Titans learned it. The gods will too. But between rises and falls are long afternoons, and those are where peace lives. Tonight you're allowed that same interval, the quiet after effort, the breath before the next beginning. So let's leave Olympus half-built, its floors still smelling of rain on stone. Below, the Titans hum lullabies no mortal ear can quite catch. Above, the first stars take their posts again, pretending they were never gone. And between those layers drifts you, small, temporary, entirely welcome. Next time, we'll climb the steps of Olympus and meet the gods as personalities rather than powers. We'll see how thunder learns diplomacy, how the sea learns jealousy, and how the earth invents harvest. The war is over now. The thunder has quieted. The Titans sleep beneath the earth, and Olympus is awake for the first time. Above the clouds, new rulers gather in halls that aren't yet marble, just open air and possibility. Before we step inside, take a slow breath. You don't need to know every name. You only need to drift with them for a while. And if this kind of gentle history helps you rest, you can like or subscribe, but only if it feels good to you. Otherwise, just listen. Maybe tell us in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Someone else might be listening from the same time zone without knowing it. Olympus, the mountain that once echoed with battle, now hums with morning wind. It smells of pine resin and damp rock. The gods, new to peace, walk slowly as if the air might break if they move too fast. Zeus stands at the center, still carrying a bit of the storm around him. His eyes flash not in anger, but in memory of what lightning feels like. He is king now, though the title doesn't mean what mortals think. He's not ruler of every decision. He's more like the sky itself, present, overarching, inconsistent. At his side is Hera, not yet the jealous queen the later poets like to describe, but a sharp, proud mind. She speaks rarely, but when she does, even thunder waits. Her gift is structure. She notices what keeps falling over and quietly fixes it. Across the newly cleared halls, Poseidon paces. He misses movement, misses the sound of tides against cliffs. He keeps his trident close, tapping it against the ground as if listening for an echo of the sea. Every sound reminds him that stillness is not his language. Hades, in contrast, stands in silence. He has already gone below and returned, testing the edges of his new kingdom, the realm of shadows and endings. It is not hell, not punishment, but order. In his world, nothing is wasted. Even the forgotten have a place to rest. Demeter tends a patch of new earth near the mountain's shoulder. She presses her palm into the soil, feeling for the pulse of roots that haven't sprouted yet. When she smiles, the mountain smells like rain turning to grain. Hestia, older sister, builds the first hearth. She lays a small ring of stones and lights a quiet flame, not for cooking, not for worship, but for belonging. The gods gather around it instinctively. Hestia says nothing. She doesn't have to. Where there is warmth, there is home. Zeus soon realizes that victory doesn't guarantee peace. Arguments grow where quiet once lived. How many offerings should mortals give? Who decides the weather? Who guards oaths? The new world smells like ozone and politics. To prevent the same jealousy that ruined his father, Zeus invites counsel. He calls for Themis, daughter of the Titans, goddess of right order. She arrives with calm eyes and brings with her a sense that conversation can be sacred. Together, they outline the first laws, not written, but spoken softly to the wind. Guests must be treated kindly. Promises matter. Balance requires boundaries. From Themis come two daughters, Eunomia, good order, and Dike, justice. Concepts that will echo through every courtroom humans ever build. When night falls, Zeus turns to another, Titaness. Mnemosyne, memory. She gives him daughters too, the Muses, 9 in number, each carrying a whisper of creation, song, history, dance, tragedy, comedy, astronomy, lyric, epic, and sacred hymn. They fill Olympus with a music that feels like morning light filtered through fog. Whenever the younger gods quarrel, Zeus invites the Muses to sing. No one wins an argument while music is happening. If your thoughts are wandering, that's all right. Just notice the rhythm of your breathing. The Muses are singing for you too. Peace is difficult to learn. Poseidon often leaves Olympus to wander the shorelines. Each time his trident touches the sea, waves rise as if answering his homesickness. He's not angry, just restless. He wants the world to move with him. Hades rarely joins the feasts. He sits quietly beneath the earth, counting the gentle arrivals of souls who slip down unseen paths. He builds a city of stillness there, a place without sun or storm, where the dead wait and remember. He appoints spirits as guides. Charon, who ferries, Thanatos, who releases, and later Persephone, whose story will braid light and shadow together. But for now, Hades simply listens to echoes and builds walls that hum with patience. Demeter visits him sometimes. She doesn't like his kingdom, but she respects his stillness. She tells him that life and death need each other like day needs night. He nods, and a few seeds she drops on her way out begin to bloom in the underworld, pale and stubborn. Meanwhile, on Olympus, Hera begins to imagine what a family of immortals might look like. The mortals below have started to build fires, to speak in simple patterns, to tell stories about thunder. She wonders if they'll also tell stories about loyalty, about keeping promises. Hera takes that as her domain, the bond that makes civilization possible. She doesn't yet know how heavy that responsibility will become. Zeus loves everything that moves, the air, the wind, the quick laughter of mortals who look up and wonder what thunder means. He's curious, he's impulsive, he visits Earth in disguises, not to deceive but to experience. To mortals, these visits will later look like affairs, adventures, mistakes. To Zeus, they are simply ways of touching the world he rules. Even gods crave contact. Hera notices, of course. She doesn't confront him yet. Her silence is its own kind of thunder. But her gaze grows heavier, and from that weight, mythology will someday invent jealousy. For now, it's only a tension, the kind that can keep a story alive for centuries. If you're listening in the dark, picture Olympus not as marble, but as cloud. Every god a color, every breath a gust. They are all trying to learn how to live without war, which is something even humans find difficult. Among the surviving titans, one remains above ground, Prometheus, whose name means forethought. He fought on Zeus's side and was allowed to stay free. While the gods learn politics, Prometheus studies the new creatures walking below, the first mortals, awkward and curious, shivering in caves. He feels something like pity, or maybe admiration. He notices they can build, imitate, and dream. He sees himself in them. Prometheus begins to teach, small lessons first. How to shape clay into bowls, how to stack stones to break the wind. Zeus doesn't mind. Teaching is harmless. Until Prometheus begins to wonder if the spark inside the gods, the one that makes thunder and song, could help mortals too. He looks at lightning and thinks, why not share? That thought will ignite a future chapter. For now, it's just a whisper flickering at the edge of Olympus. To celebrate the end of war, Zeus hosts a feast. The air smells like honey and cedar. Ambrosia drips from golden bowls that haven't yet learned to stay solid. They shimmer between idea and matter. Each god claims a seat and a symbol. Zeus, the eagle and lightning. Hera, the peacock, eyes like watchful jewels. Poseidon, the horse and the wave. Hades, the key and the cypress. Demeter, the sheaf of wheat. Hestia, the hearth flame. They toast to balance. They promise to avoid their parents' mistakes. They mean it for now. Outside the circle of firelight, smaller beings gather. Nymphs, satyrs, dryads, daimones, spirits of place and emotion. The world fills with intermediaries, each half-story between god and mortal. They tend rivers, winds, groves, shadows. Myth grows branches the way trees do, quietly, inevitably. The muses sing one last time before dawn. Their voices braid into a melody so soft it feels like breathing. It tells of order born from chaos, of love born from curiosity, of lessons still waiting to be learned. Every civilization, real or imagined, begins with an agreement, spoken or silent, about what matters. The Greeks told these stories not because they believed every detail, but because each detail felt true enough to guide behavior. Thunder is just weather until someone says it's a warning. The sea is just water until someone says it's a god's reflection. Stories make patterns visible, and patterns make peace possible. If you're still awake, take one last, slow breath. Imagine sitting beside the first fire Hestia ever lit, watching the new gods learn how to share space. They don't yet know how hard it will be. They only know that warmth feels better than lightning. The mountain is quieter tonight. The gods have learned how to sit without fighting, how to talk without thunder. And somewhere far below Olympus, a small flame is about to change everything. If you're joining for the first time, this is Restful Retellings, where history and myth are told softly enough for sleep, but carefully enough to be true. If the calm helps you rest, you can like or subscribe, but only if it feels gentle to do so. Otherwise, breathe and listen. That's all these stories ask. Maybe tell us in the comments where you're listening from tonight. 1,000 night skies make one chorus. The war is over. The titans rest below. Olympus hums above. Mortals now live between, small, fragile, and curious. They build fires from friction and sunlight, but those flames are weak, borrowed. When storms sweep in, they shiver in darkness. Zeus looks down and feels pride, but not affection. He remembers the Titan's defiance and wonders if these tiny creatures might someday learn rebellion too. So he draws a boundary, invisible but firm, between gods and mortals. Fire, the living spark of heaven, will stay in Olympus. Prometheus watches this from the edge of cloud. He has seen too many rules written by fear. Once a Titan, now tolerated on Olympus, he walks with a craftsman's patience. His name means forethought, and that's exactly what he carries. The constant habit of seeing what might go wrong and wanting to fix it before it does. He looks at the mortals below, their hands shaking and cold, their eyes wide at thunder, and he feels something the other gods don't often feel. Sympathy. They remind him of himself, small in the shadow of power, still daring to create. He descends quietly. He teaches them to stack stones against the wind, to grind grain between rocks, to make offerings, not because the gods demand them, but because ritual gives rhythm to uncertainty. Each new tool is a prayer made physical. But Prometheus knows that without warmth, the prayers will freeze in mid-air. One morning, or something like morning, since Olympus measures time by light, not clocks, Prometheus waits until Zeus looks away. He steps into the forge of the Cyclopes, where embers rest like sleeping eyes. He cups his hand around a single spark, hides it in the hollow of a fennel stalk, and walks away. The stalk smokes faintly, a breath of rebellion. When he reaches Earth, he kneels beside a mortal village. The people there stare at him, tall, strange, glowing faintly. He touches the stalk to dry grass. A small flame catches. Children gasp, elders back away. Then the warmth reaches them and fear melts into awe. For the first time, night is negotiable. That moment, the flicker that refused to die, is the birth of every fire that ever burned. Prometheus teaches them how to feed it, how to cook with it, how to tell stories by its light. Each flicker draws faces closer. Around fire, speech changes shape. Strangers become listeners, listeners become friends. Civilization begins with conversation, and conversation begins with warmth. But Olympus sees everything eventually. A line of smoke curls upward, uninvited. Zeus frowns. To him, this isn't compassion. It's theft, a reminder of rebellion. He calls the gods together. Prometheus, he says, has given them our light. If mortals can make flame, they will imagine themselves as us. Some gods agree. Hera warns that gratitude never lasts. Poseidon shrugs. The sea doesn't fear fire. Athena, not yet born from Zeus's head, will one day admire Prometheus. But for now, silence rules the council. Zeus decides that the gift must carry a cost. The punishment doesn't begin with chains. It begins with a plan. Zeus summons Hephaestus, the divine smith, and says, "Forge something beautiful, something impossible to resist." Hephaestus shapes clay, smoother than river stones. He molds a woman, tall, balanced, perfect symmetry. Aphrodite breathes beauty into her. Athena, whispered from Zeus's thought before she exists, lends grace and curiosity. Hermes adds the gift of language and, secretly, of persuasion. They name her Pandora. all gifted. Each god contributes something: charm, skill, wit, voice. But the last gift, placed quietly by Zeus, is ignorance of consequence, the innocence that makes curiosity dangerous. When she opens her eyes, the world changes shape around her. She smiles, not knowing that her creation is already punishment. Prometheus has a brother, Epimetheus, whose name means afterthought. Where Prometheus plans, Epimetheus feels. He lives among mortals, helping them learn kindness, though he's easily distracted by joy. When Pandora arrives, he forgets every warning his brother gave him. She laughs, and he decides that no prophecy matters more than that sound. They live together in a small house near the first gardens. At the center of the home sits a jar, sealed, heavy, given to Pandora with the simple instruction, "Do not open." At first, that's easy. There's too much to do, tending crops, shaping clay, learning song. But curiosity doesn't sleep. At night, she dreams of the jar whispering. During the day, she catches light reflecting off its lid. One afternoon, while Epimetheus is away, she touches it, just to feel the weight, just to lift the lid a little. The sound is like breath rushing in reverse. From the jar spill shapes, sickness, greed, hunger, jealousy, lies, all the small, tireless pains that make being human complicated. They scatter into the air, invisible but permanent. Pandora screams, tries to close the lid, but the damage is done. Only one thing remains at the bottom, a small shimmer like dew. She leans close. It's Elpis, hope. Some say Zeus placed it there as a cruel joke, so mortals would continue suffering instead of giving up. Others say it's mercy. The last ember Prometheus didn't have time to hide. Either way, humanity keeps it. Even now, every time we hurt, we reach for it without thinking. When Zeus learns what happened, his anger becomes law. He sends Hermes to seize Prometheus. No trial, no words. Chains clatter against stone. They drag him to a cliff in the Caucasus, far enough from Olympus to be forgotten, high enough to be seen. There, Hephaestus, ashamed but obedient, drives the iron links into the rock. Prometheus stands against the wind, silent. Zeus speaks once. "You wanted them to have fire. Then let the sun remind you of it every day. An eagle, vast, patient, merciless, circles and lands. It tears at his side, eating what always grows back. Every morning it returns, every night the wound closes. It's not pain that breaks him, but time. Each sunrise a reminder of a mistake he still believes was right. The poets say he never begged. He simply stared into the horizon, watching the smoke from human fires rise like prayers. Some versions say Heracles will one day free him, a hero unafraid to challenge gods. But that's later. For now, Prometheus endures. Fire is no longer just warmth. It's reminder, rebellion, memory. Every hearth carries a trace of his defiance. Every candle is an echo of that stolen spark. When people cook, create, or simply gather around light, they retell his story without knowing it. Hope, too, changes shape. It isn't blind optimism, it's endurance, the quiet decision to keep trying even when every god has gone silent. That's the real gift Prometheus gave. Not flame, but persistence. If your mind drifts, let it. Imagine sitting by the first fire, watching the sparks drift up to a sky that finally seems close enough to touch. There's nothing you need to fix tonight. The gods have made enough mistakes for all of us. On Olympus, Zeus pretends the punishment is justice, but part of him watches the fires below and feels uneasy. Mortals now tell stories about Prometheus, not prayers to Zeus. and stories, he realizes, are their own kind of fire. They spread quietly, unstoppable, reshaping everything they touch. Hephaestus forges more carefully now, wondering if compassion and rebellion are the same metal folded twice. Hera grows wary of beauty used as weapon. Hermes learns the difference between message and manipulation. And the gods, though still proud, begin to notice that the creatures below them have learned something they never will: gratitude. In the oldest Greek texts, Prometheus isn't just a rebel. He's a symbol of knowledge that costs something. Fire, like curiosity, burns both ways. It warms and it scars. Every discovery humans make carries that same spark, the risk of change. Pandora's jar, too, isn't only punishment. It's a metaphor for awareness. Once you open your eyes to suffering, you can't close them again. But inside that same awareness lives hope. Not at the top, but at the bottom, where we find it last. So if you're listening in the dark and your own thoughts feel restless, imagine that small light inside the jar, waiting patiently. It doesn't ask for belief. It just refuses to leave. The flame outside warms your hands. The hope inside keeps them steady. By the time dawn returns to Olympus, Prometheus still stands against the cliff, but mortals below now tell his story by their fires. And somewhere deep in Zeus's mind, a thought begins to form. If mortals can dream, can they also worship? The answer will shape the next age. We've followed the gods from chaos to order, from war to uneasy peace, and from peace to curiosity. Now comes something more unpredictable than thunder, more persistent than flame: love. If this slow retelling helps you rest, you can tap like or subscribe, but only if it feels gentle. And maybe, before the next breath, tell us where you're listening from tonight. Somewhere else, another listener is probably doing the same. That connection, quiet, invisible, is its own kind of story. Prometheus has given humans fire, and Zeus has learned that control is easier to lose than to keep. Olympus is built, but its peace feels like glass, shining, fragile, always one word away from cracking. Zeus rules the sky. Poseidon roams the sea. Hades tends the underworld. The sisters, Hera, Demeter, Hestia, give rhythm to life itself. But emotion, unlike war, doesn't follow rules. The poets call Hera golden-throned and cow-eyed, which means something different than it sounds. Eyes wide, calm, reflective, filled with patience. She is goddess of marriage, of bonds that hold people together, of promises spoken softly and meant to last. Zeus, though powerful, is often lonely. Victory gives him clouds, not comfort. He visits Hera often, first as a counselor, then as a companion. For a long while she ignores him. Thunder is charming only from a distance. But Zeus is patient when he wants to be. He brings small gifts: spring rain on the fields, gentle breezes, early sunlight. He shapes himself into a cuckoo bird one evening, hiding from an imagined storm. Hera lifts him into her hands to shelter him. When he shifts back into himself, smiling, she scolds him, but doesn't let go. Their wedding takes place high on the mountain, beneath trees that have never known age. The whole world blooms, literally. Gaia gifts them an apple tree that will someday become the golden fruit of the Hesperides. The muses sing, even the fates hum along. For a brief, miraculous moment, everything feels balanced. But gods do not love the way mortals do. Immortality stretches feelings until they fray. What mortals feel for a few years, gods endure forever, without forgetting, without release. Zeus's affection is vast but restless. He loves Hera, but he also loves the world. Curiosity pulls him downward, into mortal villages, into rivers, into disguises that let him experience something new. Sometimes he becomes a swan, sometimes a shower of gold, sometimes a wandering man with kind eyes. To mortals, these moments become myths of romance. To Hera, they become reminders of betrayal. She doesn't rage immediately. Hera is patience turned inside out. Her anger ripens slowly, quietly, like fruit under too much sun, and when it falls hard. Among Zeus's early loves is Io, a priestess of Hera herself. Zeus visits her in dreams, wrapped in mist. When Hera begins to suspect, Zeus panics, a rare thing for him, and transforms Io into a white cow to hide her. Hera, unimpressed, asks for the cow as a gift. He has no choice but to agree. She sets Argus, the 100-eyed watchman, to guard Io. Each eye sleeps at a different time. Freedom becomes impossible. Eventually, Zeus sends Hermes to rescue her. The messenger god tells stories and plays soft music until Argus's last eye closes. Then, he kills him quickly and mercifully. From that night forward, Hera places his eyes on the tail of her bird, the peacock, memory turned into ornament. Io, freed but still cursed, wanders the earth. Her name will linger in geography. The Ionian Sea, Io the moon of Jupiter. A reminder that even punishment can echo into beauty. Later, Zeus loves Leto, gentle Titaness of twilight. When Hera learns of it, she doesn't strike Zeus. She strikes the world around him. She forbids the earth to give Leto a place to rest or to give birth. For months, Leto wanders the edges of the world. Every island turns her away. Finally, a small floating rock, Delos, offers shelter. There she gives birth to Artemis and Apollo, twins who will light the world in opposite ways, the moon and the sun, the hunter and the musician, night's calm and day's clarity. When they cry for the first time, Hera hears it and sighs. Even her vengeance cannot silence birth. Another story, Semele, a mortal princess of Thebes. Zeus visits her in secret, wrapped in golden air. When Hera finds out, she disguises herself as an old woman and visits Semele. She whispers, "If your lover is truly Zeus, ask him to show himself as he does to the other gods." It sounds harmless, almost kind. When Semele asks, Zeus agrees, bound by an oath. He appears in his true form, not a man, but living lightning. Mortals aren't meant to see that kind of power. In an instant, Semele burns away, but in her arms was a child, Dionysus, god of wine, joy, and blurred boundaries. Zeus saves him by sewing him into his own thigh until he's ready to be born. From that day, Dionysus becomes both sorrow and celebration, a reminder that creation and destruction often share the same heartbeat. Hera's anger isn't simply jealousy, it's the ache of seeing promises undone, of watching oaths become optional. She becomes patron of wives, of all who keep households running while the world looks elsewhere. When mortals pray for loyalty, they pray to her. Even in anger, she represents the structure that keeps love from collapsing. But revenge becomes her shadow. She curses Echo, the nymph who distracts her while Zeus hides. She drives Heracles mad for being born of another woman. Her wrath turns love into legacy, each punishment teaching mortals that emotion has consequences. And still, Zeus stays with her. They quarrel, separate, reunite. Thunder becomes apology, rain becomes forgiveness. Their marriage is eternal, not because it's perfect, but because it refuses to end. If your thoughts are wandering, that's fine. The gods are quarreling above the clouds. You don't need to fix them. You only need to breathe. To the ancient Greeks, these stories weren't gossip. They were reflection. Zeus and Hera's relationship explained the world's balance between chaos and order, impulse and duty. When lightning struck, it wasn't just weather. It was Zeus's temper. When storms cleared, it was reconciliation. The cosmos itself became a mirror of marriage. The gods, for all their power, taught lessons through imperfection. They were not moral examples, they were emotional archetypes. They showed that even at the highest peaks, love is fragile and trust takes work. Below Olympus, mortals mirror their creators. They fall in love, betray, forgive, and try again. They tell stories to make sense of what they can't control. They build temples to Hera asking for patience, and to Aphrodite asking for passion. Sometimes they mix the prayers up, and maybe that's the point. Every myth becomes a lesson in balance, between desire and loyalty, freedom and promise, thunder and silence. The Greeks understood that even gods need reminders of proportion. It's strange, isn't it? The same beings who forged the laws of justice can't keep peace in their own home. The same goddess who guards oaths spends eternity chasing broken ones. But maybe that contradiction is what makes them real to us. Perfection is distant. Flaws feel familiar. When you hear thunder, you might imagine Hera glaring and Zeus apologizing in the language of weather. When rain follows, it's their reconciliation falling softly on the earth. Zeus and Hera's love has given Olympus its rhythm, not peaceful, but alive. Below, mortals are learning to use Prometheus's fire, building homes, tools, and hope. The world is growing smarter, but not yet wise. Wisdom, the kind that balances courage with patience, is about to arrive. And, as always in myth, it will arrive in a way no one expects. One morning, Zeus wakes with a pain behind his eyes, a sharp, endless pressure. He paces the marble halls of Olympus, clutching his temples. No storm relieves it, no thunder works. Even lightning flickers weakly, as if embarrassed. The gods gather, curious but cautious. Poseidon suggests salt water. Hermes jokes that maybe too many thoughts are fighting to get out. Hera says nothing, though her glance carries both concern and irony. Finally, Zeus calls for Hephaestus, the smith, who knows how to open things carefully. Hephaestus, gentle as always, approaches with his bronze axe. He hesitates. You don't strike the sky without trembling a little, but Zeus nods. One swing. A sound like thunder cracking backward. And from Zeus's forehead steps Athena, fully grown, armored, bright-eyed, calm. The poets call her Glaukopis, the shining-eyed. She carries a spear, but she holds it like a pen. Her armor gleams, but not as threat, its clarity made visible. She looks around, bows to her father, and speaks her first word, reason. Zeus's pain vanishes instantly. The other gods, stunned, bow their heads. Even Hera, despite herself, smiles. A daughter born not from jealousy or impulse, but from thought, an idea so complete it became person. Athena's birth marks the moment the Greeks would later describe as the birth of civilization, when brute force learns to think before acting. Unlike Aphrodite, who moves hearts, Athena moves minds. She is the goddess of wisdom, crafts, strategy, and measured courage, the kind that calculates before striking. She never married, never bore children, Her loyalty belongs to clarity itself. She is not cold, only precise. She finds joy in weaving, in building, in understanding how things fit together. Where Ares loves battle for its noise, Athena loves victory for its balance. She teaches generals how to win without cruelty, and artisans how to create without waste. Mortals see her as fairness wrapped in armor. Her owl, symbol of watchfulness, perches quietly nearby, eyes like two small moons. As humans begin to build cities, one region, a bright, sunlit land near the sea, asks which god will protect them. Poseidon arrives first, proud and loud, striking the ground with his trident. A spring bursts forth, but the water is salty, not sweet. The people cheer, unsure if it's a gift or a warning. Then Athena steps forward. She kneels, presses her hand to the soil, and plants a small seed. From that spot grows an olive tree, its leaves silver, its fruit nourishing, its oil steady and warm. It offers food, light, and peace, things that last longer than applause. The people choose Athena and name their city Athens in her honor. Poseidon sighs, not angry, just resigned. Even gods must accept when reason wins over noise. If your mind is drifting, that's all right. Athena would approve. She teaches that reflection is not distraction. It's thought finding its rhythm. Athena loves craft as much as wisdom, and mortals who share that love often catch her attention. One of them is Arachne, a young weaver from Lydia. Her hands move so fast they blur. Her tapestries shine like captured sunlight. People say she must have learned from the goddess herself. Arachne, proud but honest, denies it. "My talent is my own," she says. The words reach Olympus. Athena appears disguised as an old woman and warns her, "Respect the gods." Pride is dangerous. Arachne only smiles. If Athena thinks she can weave better, she's welcome to prove it. So Athena drops the disguise. Two looms appear. The contest begins. Athena's tapestry shows the glory of Olympus, perfect symmetry, divine order. Arachne shows the gods' mistakes, Zeus's disguises, Hera's wrath, Poseidon's storms. It's beautiful and it's honest. Athena finishes first. She sees Arachne's work, and for a moment she forgets anger. It's flawless. Then pride, her own this time, stirs. She touches Arachne's forehead with the tip of her shuttle. Instantly the girl shrinks, limbs thinning, hands spinning faster and faster until silk pours from them. The first spider hangs from her web, weaving forever. Athena whispers, "Let art continue, but let humility stay with it." The Greeks later said that's why spiders spin quietly, each web a prayer to both talent and caution. While Ares teaches soldiers how to fight, Athena teaches them why. She appears in dreams before battles, offering not victory but perspective. Sometimes she whispers strategy, other times restraint. She gifts the plow, the ship's rudder, and the loom, inventions that turn survival into civilization. Each represents her balance of strength and structure. She doesn't give abundance, she gives efficiency. Her temples rise across Greece, but none more famous than the Parthenon, a marble song built centuries later. Inside it stands a statue of gold and ivory, calm, tall, holding both spear and olive branch. Even silence seems wiser beneath her gaze. Athena's greatest enemy isn't war or ignorance. It's hubris, the arrogance that comes when knowledge forgets gratitude. She warns mortals that learning too fast can be dangerous. Her myths often end with lessons about balance, Daedalus building wings too clever for safety, Odysseus boasting too loudly to Poseidon, humans forgetting that every gift is a test. Wisdom, she says, isn't knowing everything. It's remembering what to respect. Zeus loves his daughter deeply. She is his mind made visible. But her independence sometimes unsettles him. She speaks plainly, even to kings. When she disagrees, she doesn't thunder. She simply looks until silence answers her. During council, she often stands beside him, not behind. When disputes arise among gods or mortals, Zeus asks her to mediate. Her presence calms storms faster than his bolts ever could. In one story, when Ares brings chaos to the battlefield, Athena guides heroes like Odysseus and Perseus with quiet words, not weapons. She proves that wisdom doesn't compete with strength, it directs it. If you're still awake, notice your breathing. Slow, steady, like the sound of a loom turning fiber into pattern, each thread crossing another, each thought weaving into rest. To the Greeks, Athena wasn't just a goddess. She was an idea that intelligence can coexist with grace, that power doesn't need noise, that victory without cruelty is the highest form of strength. Her birth from Zeus's head symbolized that the mind can create as profoundly as the body. Her olive tree reminded people that peace, once planted, must be tended. Her owl taught that seeing in darkness isn't the same as fearing it. She is the calm after lightning, clarity after confusion. And even now, thousands of years later, her name still stands for cities, for wisdom, for civilization itself. Night settles again over Olympus. The gods sit quietly around Hestia's hearth. Athena listens to the wind, hearing plans forming in it. Zeus smiles, a rare, proud kind of smile. And for once, Hera doesn't mind. Far below in Athens, mortals light small fires of olive oil. They whisper her name before sleep, asking not for luck, but for understanding. If you're drifting, let your thoughts settle like feathers. Wisdom, after all, is just attention softened by peace. If this retelling helps you rest, you can like or subscribe, but only if it feels kind, or tell us in the comments where you're listening from tonight. It's comforting to imagine the same story drifting through 1,000 rooms at once, the same light passing over many oceans. Athena has arrived, wisdom given form. Prometheus's fire warms the earth. Zeus and Hera's marriage hums with both thunder and forgiveness. Now, the world needs balance, something to mark day from night, reason from instinct, clarity from mystery. That balance will come not as one god, but as two, twins born in exile and destined to share the sky. Their mother is Leto, daughter of Titans Coeus and Phoebe, goddess of twilight, that in-between hour when light is soft and shadows grow long. When she becomes pregnant by Zeus, Hera's jealousy returns, heavy as cloud. She forbids any land under the sun to give Leto rest or safety. So Leto wanders through mountains, deserts, and lonely islands. Everywhere, the earth trembles with pity, but none dare disobey Hera's curse. Finally, one place offers refuge, a small, floating rock called Delos, so small it barely counts as land. It drifts freely, belonging to no one. There, beneath a single palm tree with gentle breezes whispering encouragement, Leto gives birth. First comes Artemis, silent, focused. Then after helping her mother through the labor, comes Apollo, bright and crying out, filling the island with light. The moment they arrive, the island anchors itself to the sea floor. The curse is broken. From then on, Delos is sacred, the place where light began. Apollo grows into a god of order, clarity, and creation, the golden-haired son of the sun itself. He governs the arts, music, medicine, prophecy, and the rational harmony that keeps chaos in check. His bow fires arrows of truth, swift, precise, and merciful. His music, played on a lyre strung with golden strings, calms storms and minds alike. The Greeks saw him as the perfect balance between beauty and discipline. He doesn't destroy, he organizes. Wherever he walks, structure follows, temples, melodies, laws. But even light casts shadows. Apollo's perfection makes him proud, and pride often invites lessons. His sister Artemis is the opposite kind of brightness. Silver instead of gold, moonlight instead of sun. Where Apollo governs order, she governs freedom. She is goddess of the wild, of the hunt, of animals and untamed spaces. She walks softly among forests, her bow slung across her shoulder, her feet leaving no trace. Artemis values independence more than worship. She keeps company with nymphs and wild creatures, bound by an oath of purity, not the absence of love, but the absence of control. She refuses to belong to anyone, and in that refusal she becomes a symbol for self-possession, for calm strength. If Apollo's light reveals, Artemis's hides just enough to make mystery beautiful. She teaches that some truths are better felt than spoken. The Greeks often said that day and night are siblings, not opposites. When Apollo rises, Artemis rests. When Artemis ascends, Apollo yields. Each trusts the other to take care of the world for a while. They share gifts freely. Apollo's sunlight heals wounds that Artemis's moonlight cools. His songs echo in her forests. Her silence gives his music room to exist. Together, they create the first rhythm. Not thunder this time, but time itself. When Apollo comes of age, he seeks a place to make his home, a sanctuary for truth. He travels to a valley at the foot of Mount Parnassus, where a serpent called Python coils around a spring, guarding the earth's secret voice. The air there smells of rot and prophecy. Apollo challenges the serpent, not out of cruelty, but destiny. The arrows fly true, the monster falls. From its ashes Apollo builds the temple of Delphi, a sanctuary of light where mortals can ask questions and hear answers shaped by divine breath. There, the Pythia, priestess of Delphi, speaks in riddles, her words guided by Apollo's calm. People travel from across Greece to listen, not because they expect clear answers, but because seeking truth is its own form of worship. Delphi becomes the heart of reason, the place where gods and mortals converse. Its motto, carved into stone, reads, "Know thyself." But light, even when gentle, can burn. Apollo once mocked Eros, the young god of love, for his tiny bow. Eros, insulted, draws 2 arrows, one tipped with gold, one with lead. He fires the golden arrow into Apollo's heart, filling him with desire. He fires the lead arrow into Daphne, a river nymph, filling her with fear. Apollo chases, Daphne runs. He calls her name, promising safety, but she feels only the weight of pursuit. At last she cries out to her father, the river god Peneus, to save her. He answers by transforming her into a laurel tree, her limbs stiffening, her skin turning to bark, her hair into leaves. Apollo stops, breathless, understanding too late that love without consent is not love at all. He touches the leaves gently and whispers, "Your beauty will live in song." He makes the laurel his sacred plant, a symbol of victory, yes, but also of restraint. Even the god of light needed to learn when to stop shining. Artemis, too, teaches her own form of boundary. One day, while bathing in a hidden pool, she is seen accidentally by a hunter named Actaeon. It's not lust, just surprise, but in divine eyes, even accident can be offense. In a flash, she transforms him into a stag, his own hounds chasing and tearing him apart. It's a harsh lesson, but an ancient one. Not all beauty is meant to be witnessed. Respect for privacy, for silence, for mystery, is its own kind of reverence. Artemis's world belongs to those who walk softly, who look with humility, who understand that some truths remain sacred by staying hidden. If your mind drifts, that's all right. You're wandering between sunlight and moonlight, the same way these twins do. Both are safe. Both belong to you. Apollo's mastery of the lyre is unmatched, but perfection is a lonely companion. One day, a satyr named Marsyas finds a flute dropped by the goddess Athena and learns to play it beautifully. The sound is raw, earthy, full of emotion, the opposite of Apollo's refined harmony. The people love it. Jealous, Apollo challenges Marsyas to a contest. They play, and the valley fills with music, gold against wood, heaven against earth. When Apollo adds his voice, Marsyas cannot match it. He loses, the god's victory turns cruel. He punishes Marsyas harshly, and the rivers themselves weep for him. Even the god of reason, it seems, can forget mercy. Later, ashamed, Apollo tunes his lyre lower, softer. He learns that music isn't just perfection, it's empathy turned into sound. Over time, both twins become healers. Apollo teaches medicine through his son Asclepius, who learns how to mend bones and cure fevers. Artemis teaches midwives and healers how to guide new life gently into the world. Their light becomes not just illumination, but care, proof that brightness doesn't have to blind. When people build temples for them, they always face east and west, so that dawn and dusk can both touch their altars. The Greeks later saw Apollo and Artemis as two halves of the same truth. Apollo represents logic, science, and structured art, the pursuit of perfection. Artemis represents instinct, freedom, and the natural world, the acceptance of imperfection. Together, they embody the human struggle to live wisely, to know when to act and when to rest, when to speak and when to listen. Balance, they teach, isn't standing still. It's moving gracefully between opposites. Tonight, we leave Olympus for a while. We'll walk among the mortals, through gardens and ruins, through gold and dust, and see how humanity changed from age to age. These are the ages of man, as told by the poets, Hesiod, Ovid, and the quiet voices who came before them. If this slow retelling helps you rest, you can like or subscribe, but only if it feels gentle. Otherwise, just breathe and listen, and maybe tell us where you're listening from. Across the world, others are hearing this same story, proof that even through centuries, we share one long breath. The first humans lived in what the poets called the Golden Age, not because the air glittered, but because life itself was light. It was the reign of Kronos before Zeus's thunder learned to shape the sky. There was no war, no hunger, no toil. The earth offered food without being asked. Fruit fell when it was ripe. Rivers stayed clear and calm. No one counted years because no one needed to. The sun rose simply to keep time for joy. When people grew old, they didn't die. They drifted softly, as if falling asleep on warm grass. Their spirits became guardians of the next generation, unseen, kind, present in breezes and luck. The Golden Age wasn't about luxury, it was about trust. The world gave, humans accepted. No one tried to own what already belonged to everyone, but peace, like fruit, ripens and falls. After Kronos fell, Zeus began a new order, and the world entered the Silver Age. The earth still gave freely, but the seasons began to turn. Spring no longer lasted forever. Winter introduced hunger. Humans had to learn work, planting, building, storing. They grew wiser but less innocent. Children stayed young for 100 years, playing in the sun. But when they reached adulthood, pride arrived with them. They forgot to honor the gods who had shaped them. Zeus, watching from above, frowned. When they finally passed away, they did not become gentle spirits like their ancestors. They lingered, restless, wandering, unsure of their place. The Silver Age ended not with violence, but with silence, the quiet disappointment of a parent realizing their child no longer listens. Then came the Bronze Age, hard and bright. Zeus, still hopeful, created a new race, strong, unyielding, hearts forged of metal and pride. They built weapons before they built homes. Their laughter sounded like clashing swords. They loved glory more than peace, speed more than wisdom. The sea filled with ships carrying men who sought conquest simply because they could. Even their tools of harvest were sharp enough for battle. The poets say they were mighty, but not wise. Their strength burned them out quickly. When they died, they left behind only ruins and echoes of their armor buried in the soil. The Bronze Age teaches one lesson. A world that worships strength will forget how to rest. Out of the bronze came something softer, braver, more human. The Age of Heroes. This was the age of Perseus, Heracles, Theseus, and Jason, men and women who lived between gods and mortals, walking the line between myth and memory. They built cities, sailed seas, challenged monsters. Their stories filled the spaces between lightning and lullaby. They taught mortals courage, though not always peace. Many of them died young, but their names lived long. Zeus honored them by placing their spirits in the Isles of the Blessed, where they could rest in sunlight that never set. The Age of Heroes was brief, like a bright note held just long enough to make silence feel meaningful afterward. And then came us. The poets called it the Iron Age, the world of toil and endurance, the one that never quite feels finished. The soil still gives, but grudgingly. Seasons shift too fast. Men grow weary before they grow wise. Women bear more sorrow than songs. Greed replaces gratitude. Truth becomes negotiable. Even families struggle to trust one another. The gods, weary of watching, retreat to Olympus and look down only occasionally. This is the age we still live in, an age of effort. But Hesiod, the old poet, said that even in the Iron Age, goodness survives. Scattered, small, but stubborn. It appears in kindnesses no one records, in songs no one pays for, in the hands that keep building despite everything falling apart. And maybe that's what makes it ours. If your thoughts wander, that's okay. These ages are not history, they're reflections. You're meant to drift through them like seasons, slowly, without rush. As time passed, even Zeus grew disheartened. He looked down at the Iron Age and saw corruption spreading, greed, betrayal, cruelty. The fire Prometheus had gifted now burned in anger more than warmth. So Zeus decided to wash the world clean. He gathered clouds and winds, and the great flood began. Rain fell for 9 days and 9 nights. Rivers overflowed. Mountains turned to islands. Humanity disappeared beneath the water, except for 2, Deucalion and Pyrrha, husband and wife, kind and faithful. They had been warned by Prometheus, Deucalion's father. He told them to build a small ark, not grand like Noah's, just enough to float hope. Inside it, they waited, holding hands while the world turned grey. When the storm finally stopped, the sea was calm but endless. Then, slowly, their boat touched the peak of Mount Parnassus. They stepped out into silence, no cities, no voices, just wind and sky. Deucalion and Pyrrha prayed to the gods for guidance. A voice, some say it was Themis, goddess of prophecy, answered, "Cover your heads and throw the bones of your mother behind you." They hesitated, confused, until they realized the riddle. Mother meant Gaia, the earth. Her bones were stones, so they picked up stones and tossed them over their shoulders. Each stone that fell softened, shifted, and took human form. The ones Deucalion threw became men. The ones Pyrrha threw became women. From those stones came the new race of mortals, not perfect, but resilient. They were born from earth, tempered by stone, and meant to endure. That's why the Greeks said humans are hard-headed but warm-hearted, made of rock, yet capable of compassion. The flood wasn't punishment alone. It was renewal, a cosmic reset reminding gods and mortals that destruction and creation share a heartbeat. Zeus promised never to drown the world again. The rainbow after the rain became his quiet apology. And the mortals, remembering the flood, began to build temples, not out of fear, but gratitude. They learned that survival itself is sacred. To live, to rebuild, to forgive the sky. These became their prayers. The Greeks never saw these ages as history, but as mirrors. They believed each person carries all 5 inside them. The golden age in our kindness, the silver in our forgetfulness, the bronze in our anger, the heroic in our courage, the iron in our endurance. We move through them daily, rising, falling, repeating. The world outside may not be golden anymore, but the world within can still shine. If your eyes are heavy, imagine the sound of the rain easing after days of storm. That's how the flood ended. Quietly, not with trumpets, but with stillness. The air smelled new. The sun rose slowly, as if testing its reflection on the calm sea. The first light touched the stones that had become people, and they blinked, unsure but alive. Even the gods paused to watch. For a moment, heaven and earth shared the same breath. Again, the gods watch from Olympus. They've seen chaos and order, wisdom and jealousy, light and shadow. Now they turn their gaze towards something entirely new, mortal courage. The Greeks called this the Age of Heroes, a time when ordinary people carried divine spark, when gods walked beside them not to rule, but to test. Tonight, we'll walk 3 of those paths. Perseus, Heracles, and Theseus, mortals whose choices shaped what bravery means. If this story helps you rest, you can like or subscribe, but only if it feels natural, or just listen. And maybe tell us where you're listening from tonight. Your own name joins an unbroken chain of storytellers that stretches back 3,000 years. The first hero is Perseus, son of Zeus and a mortal woman named Danae. His story begins not with triumph, but with fear. Danae's father, King Acrisius, received a prophecy that his grandson would one day kill him. In fear, he locked his daughter in a bronze chamber so that no man could reach her. But Zeus, being Zeus, visited her in a shower of golden light. From that light, Perseus was conceived, half god, half human, entirely destined. When Acrisius discovered the child, he placed mother and baby in a wooden chest and cast them into the sea. But the waves, kind for once, carried them safely to the island of Seriphos, where they were taken in by a fisherman named Dictys. Years passed. Perseus grew strong and curious. When King Polydectes, Dictys's brother, demanded Danae as his wife, Perseus stood between them. To get rid of the boy, Polydectes challenged him, "Bring me the head of Medusa." It was meant as a death sentence. Medusa was one of 3 Gorgons, monstrous sisters with scales for skin and snakes for hair. One look into her eyes, and any living thing turned to stone. But Perseus wasn't alone. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, admired his courage and offered her shield, polished so perfectly it could reflect without distortion. Hermes gave him a curved blade and winged sandals to cross the sky. From the nymphs, he received a helm of invisibility, a gift once worn by Hades himself. With these, Perseus set out. He didn't look at Medusa directly. He watched her reflection in the shield, moving silently through the shadows. When she stirred, he swung the blade. In one swift motion, her head fell, eyes still glowing, even in death. From her blood sprang Pegasus, the winged horse, symbol of imagination released from fear. Perseus placed the head in a sack and began the long journey home, turning danger into tool, using the Gorgon's gaze to defeat monsters and tyrants along the way. When he finally returned, Polydectes mocked him, not believing the tale. Perseus unveiled the head. The king turned to stone, mid-laugh. Then Perseus placed the head in Athena's temple, who set it in her shield as a symbol of protection. Perseus's story isn't just about courage, it's about reflection. He faced the unfaceable by looking indirectly, a lesson that wisdom often requires distance. Sometimes the best way to overcome fear is not to stare it down, but to study it carefully from another angle. The Greeks saw him as the prototype of the thoughtful hero, the one who fights monsters with clarity, not rage. The second path belongs to Heracles, or Hercules, as the Romans later called him. His name means glory of Hera, a cruel irony, since Hera hated him most. Heracles was born of Zeus and a mortal woman, Alcmena. From his first breath, Hera despised him, not for who he was, but for what he reminded her of. She sent 2 serpents to his cradle. The infant grabbed one in each hand and crushed them before they could strike. Even as a child, he was strength made flesh. But strength without peace is a burden. When he grew older, Hera struck him with madness. In a fit of confusion, he killed his wife and children, the deepest tragedy of any Greek myth. When his sanity returned, he fell to his knees, horrified by what he'd done. Seeking redemption, he went to the Oracle of Delphi, who told him he must serve King Eurystheus and complete 12 labors, impossible tasks meant to purify his soul. Each labor tested not just his might, but his patience. He killed the Nemean lion, whose hide no weapon could pierce, by wrestling it with his bare hands. He cut off the heads of the Hydra, a serpent whose wounds multiplied, learning to burn each neck before it could regrow. He captured the Ceryneian hind, the Erymanthian boar, and the Cretan bull, each time showing that control mattered more than slaughter. He cleaned the Augean stables in a single day by diverting 2 rivers through them. Not strength, but ingenuity. He tamed the mares of Diomedes, stole the girdle of Hippolyta, fetched the apples of the Hesperides, and finally captured Cerberus, the 3-headed guardian of the underworld. When he emerged, leading the beast gently rather than fighting it, even Hades respected him. Each labor was a step toward forgiveness, proof that strength could serve peace. Heracles embodies endurance, the ability to keep moving even when pain feels endless. His strength was never his true gift, his persistence was. To the Greeks, he symbolized humanity's struggle with itself, the conflict between impulse and redemption. He failed often, but he kept trying. That's why, in the end, Zeus lifted him to Olympus, granting him immortality, not as a reward for power, but for perseverance. The third path belongs to Theseus, son of Aegeus, king of Athens, a hero of intellect and reform, as much a thinker as a warrior. He grew up far from his father, unaware of his royal blood. When he came of age, his mother told him of a sword hidden beneath a heavy stone, left there by Aegeus as a test. Theseus lifted the stone easily and began the journey to Athens, choosing the dangerous road over the safe sea, determined to clear it of bandits and monsters. He defeated Periphetes, who clubbed travelers for sport, Siron, who kicked strangers into the sea, and Procrustes, who forced guests to fit his iron bed by stretching or cutting them. Each time, Theseus turned the punishment back on the punisher. Poetic justice, the human version of divine order. When he arrived in Athens, he found the city under a cruel bargain. Every 9 years, King Minos of Crete demanded 7 boys and 7 girls as tribute, victims for the Minotaur, a half-man, half-bull, trapped in a labyrinth built by Daedalus. Theseus volunteered to go, vowing to end the terror. In Crete, Minos's daughter Ariadne gave him a ball of thread. "Unravel it as you walk," she said, "then you'll find your way back." Inside the labyrinth, Theseus moved quietly, thread unspooling behind him. At its heart, he faced the Minotaur, a creature of strength without reason. They fought in darkness. When the dust settled, silence. Following the thread, he emerged again into daylight, the first to ever do so. He sailed home, triumphant, but in his exhaustion forgot to change his ship's sails from black to white. Seeing the dark sails, his father believed him dead and threw himself into the sea that still bears his name, the Aegean. Victory and sorrow arrived together, as they often do in myth. Theseus represents understanding, the courage to face confusion and make order of it. He doesn't just slay monsters, he solves puzzles. He embodies the rational hero, the one who navigates the labyrinth not by force, but by thought. The thread of Ariadne became a symbol in philosophy for logic, for reason guiding us out of confusion. The Ariadne's thread that thinkers still reference today. Perseus, Heracles, and Theseus each represent a different kind of courage. Perseus, the courage of reflection, to face fear wisely. Heracles, the courage of endurance, to keep going despite guilt. Theseus, the courage of understanding, to think your way out of darkness. Together, they form a map of human resilience. They remind us that heroism isn't perfection, it's persistence, curiosity, and humility combined. The Greeks didn't worship heroes because they were flawless. They admired them because they failed honestly and tried again. If your eyes are closing, let them. You've walked 3 long paths tonight, through caves, rivers, and labyrinths. The fires of their courage still glow, but softly now, like embers. Imagine each hero resting at the end of his road, Perseus hanging his sword beside Athena's shield, Heracles laying down his club and sleeping without nightmares, Theseus staring out to sea, watching dawn wash over the water his father became. Even heroes the Greeks believed deserve to rest. So do you. Far above, on Olympus, the gods look down and see something new. Mortals who do not wait for miracles, but create them. Zeus says nothing. Athena smiles quietly. Even Hera, for a moment, looks proud. Below, the stars shift, and the constellations take shape. Perseus holding his sword forever in the sky. Heracles kneeling with the weight of a lion's skin. Ariadne's thread glimmering faintly as the Milky Way. We've reached the quiet end of the road, the part of every story where the noise fades, the light dims, and the pieces fall gently into place. If you've listened from the beginning, you've traveled a long way, from the birth of the cosmos to the songs of the heroes. You've heard thunder soften into music, war give way to peace, and flame turn into thought. If this is your first chapter, that's all right. Every ending in Greek myth is also a beginning. So breathe, settle into the story. This is where everything connects. If you've enjoyed these retellings, you can like or subscribe, but only if it feels calm. Or tell us in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Somewhere else, under another ceiling, someone might be hearing this same final chapter, and in that small, quiet way, you're part of the same myth. We began in darkness, in chaos, a formless void humming with potential. From it came Gaia, the earth, Uranus, the sky, Eros, the spark of love that gave movement to stillness. We saw the Titans rise and fall, the gods take their thrones on Olympus, and mortals learn fire from Prometheus's brave hand. We watched love ignite and burn through Zeus and Hera. We watched Athena, born from thought, Apollo and Artemis bring balance, and humanity rise and fall through its ages. And finally, we walked with heroes, mortals who reached for divinity not through power, but through persistence. Now, with the world built and the stories told, only one thing remains: to understand why the Greeks told them at all. To the Greeks, myth was never just entertainment. It was a language, a way to describe what logic couldn't reach. They didn't tell these stories to explain thunder or fire. They told them to explain themselves. Why do we love and hurt in the same heartbeat? Why do we build cities knowing time will crumble them? Why do we search for meaning when the stars already seem full of it? Myth was their answer, because that's what it means to be alive. Every god represented a part of the human soul: pride, wisdom, lust, fear, patience, joy. Every hero represented the fragile bridge between instinct and intention, and every mortal listener, sitting by firelight, heard their own heartbeat echoed in the stories of Olympus. They weren't just hearing history, they were hearing themselves retold. The Greeks believed that every life, godly or mortal, was woven by 3 sisters, the Moirai, or Fates. Clotho spun the thread, giving it form. Lachesis measured its length, determining how long it would shine. Atropos cut it when its time was done. Even Zeus, king of the gods, bowed to them. Power could not escape pattern. The poets imagined the Fates sitting in quiet corners of the world, weaving endlessly. Each thread shimmered differently, some long, some short, some tangled, some bright. Together, they formed the tapestry of existence. In a way, we still believe this. We call it destiny, luck, coincidence. But what it really is, what it's always been, is connection. Every life touches another. Every story becomes thread. Every act of kindness, every choice, every breath weaves into something larger than we can see. If your mind is drifting, let it. You're not missing anything. You're just floating between threads, between moments of story and silence. That's where the Greeks believed the gods whispered. When a hero's life ended, the gods often lifted them into the sky, turning memory into pattern. It was their way of saying, stories don't die, they rise. Perseus forever frozen mid-strike, his sword raised against the dark. Andromeda, once a princess chained to stone, now free among the stars. Heracles resting at last, lion skin draped across his shoulders. Orion, the hunter who chased Artemis's moonlight, glowing softly just beside her. Even Pegasus, born from the blood of a monster, gallops through the night sky. Proof that beauty can spring from fear. The Greeks looked up and saw not random lights but reminders, constellations as bookmarks in the sky, each one a story they refused to forget. And maybe you've done the same without realizing it. Looked at the stars, traced a shape, and felt a quiet recognition, like remembering something you've never been told. That's the magic of myth. It feels both ancient and personal. Over time, the gods themselves began to fade, not die, just dim. As cities rose and philosophers asked new questions, the old myths became metaphors. Zeus became not a man on a throne, but a symbol of order. Athena became the idea of wisdom itself. Apollo became reason, Artemis instinct, and Hera the endurance of love. And Prometheus, poor, defiant Prometheus, became the spark of innovation that refuses to stop burning. The Greeks didn't lose their gods. They carried them inward. Every human choice became a small act of worship. Every story told by firelight became another Olympus, built not from marble, but from meaning. They also believed that storytelling was sacred because it mirrored the act of dreaming. When we tell stories, we step into another world. When we sleep, that world steps into us. The line between myth and dream blurs until they become the same thing, imagination remembering itself. That's why the ancients told their myths before sleep, not to escape the world, but to understand it better by morning. They saw dreams as conversations between the conscious and the divine, carried through the same language as story, image, symbol, and wonder. So if your eyelids are heavy now, that's exactly how it's meant to be. You're doing what the earlier storytellers did, letting words turn into rest. Thousands of years later, the temples are gone, but the stories remain. They've crossed languages, oceans, and centuries because their truths never depended on marble. The Greeks said that memory is the mother of the muses. Her name was Mnemosyne. And maybe that's the real secret of myth, that to remember something is to keep it alive. Every time a story is retold, whether by poets, painters, or a quiet voice before sleep, the old world wakes up again. When you listen, you're part of that act of revival. Your imagination becomes another temple. Your calm becomes another offering. If you're still awake, picture this. A quiet shoreline, the water silver with moonlight. The waves move slow, steady, whispering names you half remember. Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo. Each name drifts in, fades out, like the tide breathing. Above you, Constellations shift, lines connecting ancient heroes into gentle shapes. The night air smells of olive and rain. Somewhere nearby, a small fire burns, the same one Prometheus once carried. Its smoke curls upward, a thin silver thread joining the stars. This is what myth was always meant to be. Not noise, not spectacle, but connection. A story stretching between light and dark, between wake and sleep. Now the gods rest. Their thrones are quiet. Their wars have ended. The heroes sleep beside them, their names safe in the stars. The world below keeps turning, slower, softer, still alive. The same winds that once carried Athena's voice now carry yours. The same waves that lifted Deucalion's boat still lap gently at forgotten shores. And you, the listener, have walked the same path they did, through chaos and courage, through loss and renewal, all the way to peace. So rest now. Let the fates weave quietly. Let the stars finish the story. You've heard the rise and fall of gods, and you've arrived where they all end, not in thunder, but in calm. This has been Restful Retellings, the entire story of Greek mythology. Thank you for letting this story keep you company tonight. May your dreams be soft, your thoughts kind, and your mornings bright with understanding. Until the next retelling, sleep well, traveler. The fire burns low, the story sleeps with you